All right, I was thinking while in Vegas of doing a new change-up for the show. I'm going to replace your image with this one. So I hope you're cool with that. I think we're going to get a lot more views now. So, you okay?
If we really wanted a few more views, couldn't you replace your image instead? That would probably improve it a lot more. Just saying. And welcome to the Foundry Files. I'm Weary, and that is another person right next to me.
Hi, I'm another person. Nice to meet you guys. Admiral Murphy.
And I lost count. What episode are we on?
33.
33.
It's been a while. I was at Vegas partying. It was awesome. I got to meet a lot of cool people down there. I met the folks over at the Mission Log podcast, tons of people from Trek Radio, Stoked Radio. I got to meet Mav and Nikki. Well, I met Mav before, but I didn't get to meet Nikki. Met a bunch of Jupiter Force members, other Stow players. Wasn't a lot of other Foundry authors down there. I should mention this because I was the only Foundry author podcaster down there. So it was on me to get Foundry news. I did not. But I have an excuse. And this is what I'm calling my cryptic conspiracy. This is cryptic trying to cover up Foundry news right now. And here's why. The Stow developer panel was where I was going to get them. I was going to ask them, how are you going to fix the Foundry, people? But they planned it ahead of time. I'm pretty sure they did plan this ahead of time so that I couldn't be there because I would be getting my picture taken with Terry Farrell because that was at the same time. They planned it so I couldn't be there. They knew I was going. So there. They also planned the Stow developer hangout session at the bar, which I can't get into yet because I'm a youngling. So they are definitely trying to avoid Foundry questions. I'm on to you, Cryptic.
Hang on, you call yourself a youngling? Is that when you were slain by Anakin in episode 3?
Well, okay, because in America you're not an adult till you're 21. So if it was in Europe, I could get in, but since this is America and we're kind of messed up over here, I couldn't get in.
Actually, that's a good point. I wouldn't have been able to even if it went.
Yeah, if you see, if it was over there, you could have gotten in. But over here, you couldn't. See, that's the messed up part. So, Cryptic, I'm on to you. I know you don't want to talk about the Foundry, so I'm on to you. We're watching you. We will get you to talk about our Foundry. Now, so yeah, I am sorry, but there was cool stuff going on in Vegas. Tons of cool goodies. Do I have stuff here? Yeah, here, I got a ship. Here's my ship. I got a ship. I actually got this ship for free. I just went up and got it. I didn't steal it. No, it was given to me I pitched Odo as the best security officer for one of the panels and the debates for like the fantasy football type thing for crew and stuff. There was tons of cool stuff going on there. It was cool to see panels and stuff and meet the developers. I got to talk with Brandon, Thomas. I forget the one content developer. I think her name was Katie. I apologized on Podcast UGC because I forgot her name. I'm bad with names, so I'm really sorry. But she worked on a lot of the Legacy of Romulus content and stuff like that, so that was cool. But and a bunch of people, so it was really cool. But there was some Foundry news. Very little, but there was some while we were gone, so let's get into that. Okay, so guess what? This is how I pitched it to Wee, so I want to pitch it the same way on the show. So, hey guys, guess what? You can go make Romulan missions now.
Yay!
Yay! Everybody's cheering, right?
Yeah.
But there's a but, like usual. You cannot... This is the funny part, so get ready. you cannot test your missions because you cannot make a Romulan character to test them. So you can just make them, but you can't actually test the missions at all. But you can publish them. But apparently, when you publish them, you can't find them. So
you can't test them. And
so you can't test your missions, and if you decide to push them out, nobody can find them. Apparently, I have not tried this, but I've heard this from other Foundry authors and podcasters. So if I'm wrong anywhere, that's on me from going with these guys. But yeah.
Actually, I heard about this at work, and here you can see for yourself.
Memo!
That's currently the state of Romulan mission making. That's about it. There were some other updates. They added squirrels and epos and stuff.
I thought I heard that it wasn't actually supposed to go live when it did. So
It seems like that. Because we both said this sounds like something that accidentally made it into the Foundry, like all those ships that always accidentally make it. But then they come out and say it's a bug. So it seems like, oops, it's not working as intended. But I honestly do feel that's their cover-up from going, oops, we accidentally released this early. Because, come on, this sounds like it was released early. Which I guess isn't a bad thing, because at least got Foundry authors happy that, hey, the Romulan stuff is going to come soon. Because it's in the Foundry now. They just got to do some tweaking, and it will be good to go. So I suspect in a week or two, people can start making their Romulan missions. Which is great, because my major complaint about the Romulans is once you're done with the 40, up to level 40 missions, I don't feel like a Romulan anymore, because you go and do either Fed or KDF content. So if you want to feel like a Romulan and do some more Romulan story missions, Foundry is a great way to do that. We just need to be able to make those missions. So, but yeah, they added in epos apparently to the Foundry. Squirrels, they're labeled as, and then the actual epos in the Foundry are the Christmas ones. And yeah, that's all I've basically heard. That's about it. So that's our news for the week, guys.
And onto the review now. Crossing Admirals, part 3 of 3. So we're on the final part. We're expecting good things, and well,
wow,
it was a bit of a disappointment, unfortunately. I was just going to say that up front. Before we get into the main start of things, this review is going to be different. Okay, because part 3, we're going to be honest, was a letdown. And in return, instead of doing a proper review, what we're going to be doing is general advice. We're going to be cross-discussing in probably different orders, because we're like that. And we're not going to have sort of like any formal structure as we usually do. We'll still be given the different like pointers, like which place, what's the average star number, with all that kind of stuff for each section, and of course the overall score. But generally, it's not going to be the same kind of a thing.
Yeah, we're not reading bullet point per bullet point. Plus, Wee Wee's going on vacation, so we're kind of brushing this one out before he goes. Because he's going, where are you going? London again or something? We don't know.
No, it's just some place in the country.
Some place. Yeah, he's going to like Spain or Mars or something. But anyway, let's get into this, shall we? What are our stats?
As of this recording, it has 755 players, so that's a pretty good number. Yep, a 4.02 star rating, which, by the way, it was about midway through the entire series. It's actually the highest place out of the Admiral series, ironically. And is part 3 of both the miniseries and the overall story arc.
Okay.
Sorry, Ben.
All right. So, in this mission, so last time, remember, I'm about to spoil what happened in part 2, so if you haven't played part 2, you might want to stop. But here we go. So, you pick up after you were captured by the Emperor and the loyal Terran Empire soldiers, and guess what? You're now sitting in a brig, ready to be executed. But are you going to be executed? Are you really going to sit there and be executed? You have to play to find out. So the plot is good. I enjoyed it.
It makes sense.
It's not like anything amazing spectacular. There's no amazing plot twists. The one part I want to call out, because I felt this kind of made it a little plot hole for me, was, do you remember the part where you have that Terran Empire guy who was holding you at the broom,
Yeah.
and then you are freed by your helpers? One, I was like, okay, where'd these guys come from? But that didn't bug me as much. It was after you capture him, it seems very easy that he switches sides, even though from what he's saying, he doesn't want to switch sides. Like, you very easily convince him to give you a code.
Well, it depends what kind of a dialogue route you talk. The dialogue route I took was a more intellectual, sort of like convincing approach, and it made logical sense the way I approached it. Whereas if you took, say, like, you have to give us a code now because we're pointing guns in your face, then I can see why that would happen.
Well, no, the one I did, I kind of did the intellectual, and then what I said was, he was like, no, I'm not going to betray the Empire. And you go, well, you're going to die either way. And then he goes, okay, here's the code. Like, it's a really short sentence, too. It's not him being conflicted. It's just like, oh, okay, good point. Here's your code. I didn't believe it. It was just kind of like, yeah.
That might have been the different choices. We might have split on that a bit, because the way I saw it was, the choices I made were more of like convincing through logical sense, because this happens because, well, there's a very good reason for it. Like, there's a good chance that the Admiral would shoot you in the back or something because he doesn't want you anymore, or something like that. And these kind of things I noticed were quite both relevant and pretty logical, I'd probably say, actually. So generally, I didn't really have a problem with it. It all depends on what route you take.
Yeah.
And I think that was partly the problem. Multiple routes is good, but in this case, a few of them don't exactly make as much sense as the one maybe I pursued.
Yeah. And I'm gonna jump down to the dialogue and the writing for it. The dialogue was okay, nothing like super spectacular, but it was good Terran Empire dialogue, I felt, still, like the last ones. The only problem was, I felt it was, again, taken away. The quality was taken away by the frequent grammar errors.
Yeah, I noticed a lot of those.
In fact, I got to the point towards the end where I was getting kind of tired of it, because your eyes start to see just that and not reading what the content of those sentences are, because you got periods where commas should be, so you're just like, their sentences are just ending, and then commas where periods should be, and stuff like that. So I highly recommend, please do go back and make sure it is proper English when people are playing through the mission.
And just as an upfront, you might want to get someone else to read it for you, because Microsoft Word isn't exactly your best friend all the entire time.
It's pretty good. It's much better than the Foundry.
It's good, but don't rely on it. It's not your best friend all the time.
Yeah. So anything else you want to hit here in story? I mean, I felt the characters were okay. They weren't like, they didn't seem to play an integral part into this part of the story.
That's the one thing. That's the one thing. That's where the differences of opinions actually differ on us, because from your point of view, you haven't played this for either. This is only the third mission of the entire series, whereas I know half of these characters already.
Because they're expanded upon. See, at this point, I got introduced to the dude on the starbase, who probably makes like a quick appearance when you're first beginning the mission, and then later on, and then the dude who interrogates you, and that's really about it. So character-wise, I didn't feel like they were really moving the story forward. I just felt they were there.
Well, by the end of the series, there's like a billion different characters which you all have to remember, and it can be quite confusing sometimes. This mission introduces a few more than it does in previous missions, because in the first two, you only had like one or two major characters that stick throughout the entire series, like an admiral or two or something like that. In this, you introduce a few more like lower ranked people, which will stick with you for a bit, and something will happen, or they'll stick with you forever, what have you. All these plot developments. But generally, this mission is actually quite a good character introduction mission for the later series, because what this part mini-series needs to do, which I felt it did do, is introduce these kind of characters as a sort of like an onset for the rest of the major series. Of course, this mini-series is finishing. You've been captured, and now you're going to try and escape, inevitably. And this is where you will probably try and get help from outside sources, which is where you may meet the major characters, which will play a pivotal point further up the story.
Did you feel this concluded the mini arc? Because when it ended, I was kind of surprised that, oh, this is how this first part of the series ended. It felt like it also kind of like just dropped off. Like, it didn't feel like there was a real conclusion to this part. Like, I thought the conclusion would be something to do with this Doomsday mission and stuff.
Let's think about it. The major plot point in part 1 is the fact that you discovered an already existing Terran task force, which has been there for about 7 years-ish, and has gone against the wishes of the Terran Empire. And you are rather forcefully going into it, you're allying with them. Part 2 is developing that a bit more, isn't it? And part 3 is where you've been captured because of that, and you're trying to escape. And saying that, it didn't exactly do anything towards the end. I mean, granted, you do a few things which kind of like get you out of stuff, but the overall story arc, it kind of needed in a conclusion, but not really at the same time.
Yeah, because I could understand it.
Me having played, from your point of view, I can see why it needs a conclusion. From my point of view, I know for a fact that this will have a conclusion eventually because I've played all the missions, and it's also kind of necessary that this point is carried into other future missions, not just part of this mini-series. Maybe it is a bit of a tongue twister, and I can see both points, but it depends what viewpoint you're coming from.
Yeah, because if I was making a series, like I have multiple series out there, they don't really tie together, but they're all part of this universe in the Gamma Quadrant I've created. And they're each their own separate story where you can pick them up and continue them. I felt like, from the way it was labeled, that you'd play the Crossing Admirals and it'd be its own little story point. And then either some stuff would carry into the next series for that, or it'd be a continuation or something. I didn't really get that feeling. I felt like there was more to continue, but it would be part of this little arc. It seems like, is there a reason that it needs another name after this point?
I think if I had to name one thing that was an overarching story arc, it was your actual turning towards this new strike force, which you found in our universe.
Okay, yeah.
And of course, in part 3, you were inevitably captured by the very forces you're turning against and going against. And so I could kind of see that as a resolvement. But this mini-series primarily should function as an introductory series, as weird as that kind of sounds. Because normally
take it as like the first episode of a.
Normally you would have an introductory mission, but because the story arc is so large, 16 parts I think it is now, you kind of need multiple missions to introduce things. And this is where part 3 comes in. Introduce some of those major characters, like I said earlier. And a 3-part miniseries does need its own little arc, and I think a few more developments could have been made on this end. But I think a 3-part miniseries is exactly what it needed for an introductory series. Because as you get into the next series and a few more missions later on, you will see why these things happen the way they happen, and why these 3-part miniseries is the way it is. At least I think.
All right. What did story get?
The story got a 7.22, which put it in 39th place, so pretty low down.
Yeah, it's
a pretty good score, but compared to some of the others we've had, it's not up there.
Yeah, there's nothing like unexpected that's going to happen with this story. I'll say that. So that's probably why it's it's going to be a good read, but it's not going to be something you're going to remember far down the line. So on to technical. Map usage, I found the maps pretty simple, not much customization in this one. In fact, it was a few of them I would change. One, because one had some technical issues, and don't worry, my own mission suffers from this. I just am too lazy to change it. It's the one where you're facing all the Terrans. The other one is when you're being held by the Terran Empire, there's like Federation logos on the wall. I noticed that, so that was kind of out of there, so maybe just make a simple room or something. Just some recommendations there. Transitions were fine. I didn't have any issues with transitions.
All right, for those video watchers, you're going to see Wee-Wee's gone. That's because in editing, I saw some of the audio for the technical section got messed up. So if you're using Camtasia, or you're thinking of using Camtasia to record your podcast or stuff like that, don't, because after this episode, I am moving away from it. It's crap, so don't use it. But anyway, I do want to hit a few technical points, but the rest of the audio for this show is fine. But for technical, a few things I want to hit quickly is for like technique. We found it was okay, but I found a few issues with it. There's a point in the mission where you beam down to you're on the starbase, and there's 5 mobs that you have to kill across the map. And this kind of goes into gameplay too. I do complain about this in gameplay as well. But the problem here with the technique of how it's done is when you go into the room, you engage one of the squads, which I did. My dumb boss decided to pull another squad, and I think one more also got pulled. So there's 3 squads on top of me, and I died. I was like, no biggie, I'll respawn, and I'll just pick them off again. The problem is the respawn point moved to another point on the map. I guess I got close enough to another one that it spawned me in another area of the map where I was now on top of another mob. So, and the other 3 decided from where they were to come running to where I'd respawned. So I had 4 mobs. They were pretty tough mobs too, on top of my character. Now, if I was on my main character, I probably could have handled them, but I was playing an alt where the buffs aren't really set up or anything. Heck, not even the main character. And that was a pain. I was stuck in that for a few good minutes, and it's frustrating. And that could be improved. Move the squads a little farther apart. Make sure the spawn points are in a good location. It's generally good not to have spawn points usually on top of mobs. Heck, I'm even guilty of this, but that's something just to look out for. There was some art asset usage, but not really huge customization in many of the maps. Much different from before when there was a lot of customization, especially on that first space map. I didn't find anything super creative in the mission. There's nothing memorable you're going to find, whether story or tech-wise. Tech is pretty basic in this mission. The instructions were fine because a lot of the steps you're going to be doing is simple. And there wasn't many foundry limitations. The only one I want to point out is there's a point where you have to kind of be escorted to a captain for interrogation or something like that. And we've seen workarounds in the past with like Rogue Enterprise's mission where you could walk. Like in his mission, you're escorting a freighter, and he set up a patrol path where it makes it seem like you're being escorted. Something might have been able to be done like this, because when you have to go to that captain, it's weird because you think, oh, the guards are going to escort you there like in normal prison transfers or something like that. But no, and probably because this mission is old, it just hasn't updated. But instead, it just has like characters along the wall standing there. So in case you go off the beaten path, they'll probably just shoot you. So it's kind of weird, but that's that. So that's the tech stuff that was lost in audio. So back to your original programming.
Oh no, we got a freaking tie again. What do we got here, Wee?
Well, we got a 5.43, which is tied 41st with Spectres Part 6 and Memory Lane. Yes!
You heard it here first. We likes 3 ways. So, yeah, the tech could use some improvements. I'd do another technical look around, especially because this mission seems old, and I think that's most of the reason going into it. And it's probably a Hello World mission, because I know, like, if I go and look at my own Deep Space 11, it's pretty old, and it'd probably receive a similar score.
The thing with this mission is you can see the title text in the dialog boxes, so this has definitely been updated since that feature's been in place.
Okay, but it has been major.
Now, I want to say.
So I take a look.
Yeah.
It is up to you, of course. We're just making our recommendations. You don't have to listen to us, but we're just saying what we think. But into gameplay now. This is probably one I did not like, so I'm definitely going to offer some improvements. Yeah, so why don't we get started here? Space gameplay. Again, not much to do. In fact, I think you do like one thing. You fly somewhere. Now, not a biggie. I mean, there's a lot of missions out there where you don't need it.
There's a few interactions as well, like as a couple of objects as well, a few reach markers. There's more than one object you have to do, but there's not much beyond that really. It's mainly dictated by the combat.
Yeah, so let's go into the space combat. I see you gave it you gave it a 6, I believe. I gave it like a 4 or something, maybe less.
Yeah.
But the reason I did so is I felt it was really grindy, and I think it's because. So I like to think of this as one of my early missions. I want to compare it to that because I know in my early missions I kind of stuck with the cryptic way of doing it. So even I'm going to compare this to early cryptic missions.
I get it. You felt like it was a patrol mission.
Yeah, I felt it was more like a patrol mission where you're killing 5 things, but for story reasons, it could be easily simplified down. It felt like they were there just so you could have some gameplay value. Mm-hmm. This was the case for when you have to go around the map and kill 4 bad guys, where I felt, why don't they just either fly to you, or why don't you cut down on it, because there's going to be more space combat later on. I felt that because I know there's a mission of mine where like I have a player emerge from a wormhole, they engage a bad guy, and it makes more story sense to have more bad guys come to that location, but I make you go to them, and it has a real patrol mission quality. I feel like this mission's suffering from that same fate where it could be done a little differently so it doesn't have that. And also there's a point where towards the end of the mission, you were being followed by a squadron of ships. And it would make complete sense then at the end of the mission that that's the only squadron you face, which is like 3 or 4 ships. But he has it where you take on wave 1, wave 2, and that's cool for a space combat wave, but to fit into the story, I felt at that point, especially with all the combat already there, should just done that squad.
there was a bit of an issue on that front, but generally, I'd actually give it a thumbs up for where of multi-stacking. There were multiple groups in this, which is definitely a thumbs up. Maybe people have been a bit closer together because you have like allies in helping with you and all that kind of stuff. So maybe that would have probably countered that sort of thing. But generally, I'd say it was a thumbs up because of multi-stacking. And there was a bit of versatility in the way everything was set up. I mean, you even had a few fighter squads there, if I recall, as well.
I don't know if it was because I was tired of the ground combat that I got stuck in for a bit, and of I don't know if other factors are coming into it where I was kind of tired of the mission, so I didn't want to do any more combat. I will say that up front, that could be influencing the score. I think most likely if I was not tired of the mission already, I wouldn't have a problem just continuing on with these killing. But I'm just saying it as it is. By the time I was getting to these waves, I was kind of like already done. So that's something to look at. Maybe cut down on some of the combat, make it fit more with the story, stuff like that. Same kind of goes for ground. Especially do take a look at the ground combat, where the room where I pulled everybody that I could see a lot of people getting into. Just make sure the respawn point, they're in good places, not on top of a mob. That's generally good advice, is not to have a respawn point on top of a mob.
Yeah. I didn't face that problem with it. I managed to actually successfully get through the mobs. The only multi-stacking problem I had on the ground was towards the end of the room, where I think it's a captain level and I think it might have been a lieutenant or lieutenant commander level, pretty near each other. Unfortunately, I had the misadventure of going in between them, because that's where the door is. I pulled them both, and I almost got completely disintegrated by vacation holding a minigun, which was not fun.
Minigun. That was sweet.
Yeah, I killed him, but I lost like 2 boss in the process, and I almost died myself.
Yep.
So it was a bit of an issue.
Yeah, ground gameplay. I did like that little puzzle. There's not much in the means for this, but you do have the little word puzzle where you're trying to convince that guy to give you the code. It could be improved, but that was a little bit of a nice touch.
I wouldn't really call it puzzle, more or less. I would more like call it alternate dialogue.
Yeah, that's right, because you either just kill him earlier or you go through the line of convincing him.
I chose to kill him at the end, even though I managed to convince him.
I killed him at the end too. I said, when I leave the room, kill this guy. Because come on, it's the Terran Empire. Which is also why, maybe because I chose that, I was just like, geez, this guy easily gave up the code. Most likely thinking I would kill him anyway.
Then you shoot him at the end. That's what you do.
Yeah, exactly. But, and then replayability, there's the alternate dialogue, again, in that debate where you're trying to get the code. But other than that, no real reason for replay.
No, really. It's kind of a shame as well, because again, this mission suffers from a lack of alternate dialogue, and the only alternate dialogue is in a really good part as well.
Yeah, and again, I think this mission really needs alternate dialogue, because it does assume, at least majorly in the first couple parts, that you're human, you're a Terran. Yep. And I was on my character. I don't know about you. Were you on a?
Well, it's the overall concept of that. I noticed it throughout the entire series. There is a slight problem with alternate dialogue throughout basically all of the missions, which I noticed. There is a seemingly lack of alternate dialogue, seemingly lack of options. I could kind of see that because it's like a great big story arc, and it kind of needs a linear progression. I tend to do the same thing with my story arc as well, so I can kind of see that point. But at the same time, it's not very nice for gameplay, really, is it? It's like you can really kind of choice at the same time.
I know with all my missions out there, I don't do a lot of branching dialogue. I think I only wrote one series where I usually tried to put in 3 options for players. Mm-hmm. Whether they split off or not was different. It was just at least have 3 options for a character to say something.
Just alternate saying something. It doesn't actually have to be different options. It could be just saying, like, I'm going to say it this way, I'm going to say it this way, I'm going to say it this way. That's for example, that's a good way to get around like Klingon only dialogue and Klingon missions. It's going to be like Gorn or Orions or Nausicaans or something. They're going to say it differently. Yeah. So,
and I feel the Terran Empire is the same way. You need something for the Terrans because they're going to act a completely different way than the races they have enslaved. So that's something to look at there.
But it doesn't. Well, I wouldn't say it more like that. I mean, you could put that in as a technical reason, but I would have thought it more like, well, you could approach it this way, or indirectly. You could be like, give me your stuff now, or I will kill you 1-on-1. Or you could approach it sort of in between, that kind of a thing. So it's like different options, essentially the same thing, but not really sort of like, like different sort of contexts as it would be for different species. Because it's the Terran Empire after all.
So gameplay got a 5.14, our 42nd ranked one in gameplay. So again, you're not going to have necessarily fun with the mission if you're just coming in for a gameplay. It could use some improvement there. But overall, what do we think, Wee? I want to hear what you think, because I think it's different than what I think, because you've played through the whole series. But for the first 3 parts, what did you think?
Overall, as an actual 3-part series, there were unresolved questions. But at the same time, that's kind of necessary to progress through the next parts. You need introduction to characters. This entire series needs to be introduction, and you need sort of like a basis to carry this on. And that's where the mission leaves off. You do something, and it leaves off to the rest of it. It's like, what happens next? That's where you go into the next mission, and it's something that you really want to go into it now, because even replaying it, I want to try and remember what happened, and actually progress through it towards the end again, because that's the way the story's developed. And I think this is one of the key features of this entire series. Overall story arc, never mind the miniseries, the story has good progression. It's logical, a bit debatable sometimes, but generally I think it's really, really good. And overall, a 5.43 for this mission at least is satisfactory. But leading into other missions, it's kind of, like, story-wise, it's probably the best on that front.
Yeah, from where I'm coming at right now, I have not played the future stuff, so Wee knows what to expect. So for him, it gets better from here on out. But
by the way, 5.43 is a tied 43rd with General Rebellion.
All right, so
just saying.
Tie, jeez. All right, but so for me, if Wee had not pumped the mission up as it gets better later on, at this point, I don't know if I'd keep playing, because there is a lot of issues I've had with it, whereas I'm at the point where I'm like, I'd go play something else. Because investing time into a 16-part arc to even play it, that's a lot of time.
It is a bit, yeah.
So I feel like
there's a compelling enough reason, to go to it.
And I don't know if it's the problem where I'm not a huge fan of the long arcs. Like, I don't do the 3-hour-long missions or the huge epic arcs. I can do the 5-part ones, because usually part 1 will hook you onto it. And the problem I have is this has done it in 3 episodes where it feels like a part 1, and yet I haven't become hooked on it. So that might be something the author wants to look at, is doing some more refinement on these earlier parts to get the player hooked.
Yeah, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Introduction is the most important part, and in a multi-part story arc, which is as big as this, and if you're going to spread out the introduction to 3 missions as you have done here, it's especially important that this carries on a very similar tone of like overall introduction, but at the same time a good story progression, a good story introduction, and maybe resolve a couple of things, because of course it's a mini-series.
Yep.
So generally, a bit of improvement can be made here. And I think a really strong intro would really get you hooked. But like I said, I think there's a compelling enough reason at the end of the mission to get you hooked onto the rest of the missions. I mean, despite the sort of letdowns and the bit of debates and all the kind of stuff we've had in this mini-series so far, I think that end, you'll probably agree with me on this, you want to know what happens next, don't you?
Yeah, I kind of do. I'm not like, oh my god, I need to know what happens next, with like Shadows of Midas, but I'm just kind of like,
at least some interest is sufficient interest, I think, because there are more than one part. You want to like, well, what kind of a plot line is this? If it's so big, why is this sort of miniseries like not very good? Yet there's so many missions, like, and all that kind of stuff. It's like going somewhere, you're doing something, and then it's missions, a good reason to get to it, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, what happens next is the compelling question at the end of this mission. And I think that's probably the most important thing to take away from this series. Mm-hmm. Debatable series, but what happens next is the most important.
Anyway, so that was our review of the Crossing Admirals. We'll be picking up the series possibly sometime in the future, but we're going to go play some other missions, because of course we like to focus and bring other authors to attention and stuff like that. So I think we've got a few on the plate now. Possibly, I got on Twitter a Fed Romulan mission somebody had made. So that will be interesting to play. It's actually a Romulan mission we can go out and play, unlike the other ones. We have yet to shoot our news segment yet, so it's weird for me to talk about this, but I know we're talking about this in the news. But anyway, you can look at us on iTunes. It's under Stoked Radio and stuff like that. Follow us and subscribe to us on YouTube. That tells us how many constant viewers we've got. So that really helps us know what our audience size is. So please do. If you're watching us but have not subscribed, please do it. That's coming from me. I did not subscribe to people for a while until I realized, oh, this really does help them determine their average numbers. So
I will mail you pie if you do.
Yeah, pie's good. So we've got pie. Is it apple?
It's just pie.
Oh, just
it's
pie.
like
Okay.
It's like, why do you need a specific one? It's pie. That's
Maybe they like apple, or maybe they're allergic to apple. I don't know. But anyway, thanks for tuning in, and we will catch you guys next week. Maybe if I decide to do something, we won't be here, but I might do a tutorial or something. We'll see. But we'll catch you when we see you. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye.